Good evening, Democrats. 35 days to go until Election Day. Are you feeling it yet? I can tell you we are feeling it at the party. Hello, my name is Vincent Jones. Thank you for joining us for our third Prop Talk this election cycle. Most of you know me, but for those of you who don't, I'm the training director and senior advisor for the party, and I'll be facilitating this conversation this evening. Before we begin, let's take a second to spread the word to more voters across the state. Tonight's invite link is in the chat. If you can just click on the link and then press either share on Facebook or share on Twitter, you will do just that. You will share it on the socials. So just click the link in the chat and click share on Facebook or share on Twitter to share it on one of those platforms. You can also copy and paste that link and text it to a friend to invite them to join us. They still have time. So once you've done that, if you can just type yes, we can in the chat, so I know you helped us spread the word, I greatly appreciate it. You can also share the link from the YouTube videos from our past two Prop Talks. That link is also in the chat. Okay, I'll give you a second to do that. Let's see, do I see any yes we cans? I don't see any yes we cans yet. Hope to see at least 3. I know you can help me. There are a lot of you on here. Okay, there we go. Thank you. I see 1. Okay, I see 2. Look at that. There we go. I love it. I love to see it. Love to see it. We need to spread the word about why people vote no on Prop 27. Now let's get into it. I want to introduce our speakers first. We have Chairman Daniel Salgado. He has served as the Tribal Council Chairman for the Cahuilla Band of Indians since 2016, and recently was elected Secretary of the California Democratic Party Native American Caucus. The Cahuilla Band of Indians are Mountain Cahuilla, one of the original peoples of Southern California. Chairman Salgado represents one of the over 60 California tribes that oppose Prop 27. Welcome, Chairman Salgado.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you. Yeah, as mentioned, I'm Daniel Salgado, Chairman for the Cahuilla Band, and I appreciate you guys having us on tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. We also are joined by Dr. Jolie Proudfit. Dr. Proudfit is professor and department chair of the American Indian Studies Department at the California State University of San Marcos. She's also the director of the California Indian Culture and Sovereignty Center and founder and executive director of California's American Indian and Indigenous Film Festival. She currently serves as vice chair of the California Democratic Party Native American Caucus. Welcome, Dr. Proudfit.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Okay, let's get into the Prop Talk. So first, I should say, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A function in the chat. We'll get to as many questions as we can, and let's get into it. So Chairman Salgado, before we get into why Democrats should vote no on Prop 27, can you share what the proposition purports to do and who supports it?
Yeah, certainly. What the proposition purports to do is to legalize online sports wagering here in California, and the measures is supported, and the proponents are large out-of-state corporations that come here to California, look to exploit California's initiative process for their own gain, and take 90% of the profits with them.
Gotcha. And then can you speak more about who some of the companies are?
Yeah, it's a large out-of-state corporations. Some of the larger ones, there's a few of them: FanDuel, DraftKings, BetMGM, just to name a few.
I got you. And there are a few tribes in favor. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the campaign is confusing, and that question comes up often, right? And we hear that there's tribes, right? There's tribes that support it, and they're both on both sides of the fence. Who do we support? And I say, well, look at the sheer number of tribes that support both initiatives or are opposed to it. They barely have 3 tribes that support the initiative, while well over 60 tribes here in California are opposed to it. So while they barely have enough to make it plural, and to where that makes it confusing for California voters, and they say tribes, but it's really there's only three. So it does make it confusing.
That's a great clarification. So 60 tribes oppose Prop 27, only 3 support it. That's very clear. Dr. Proudfoot, I've read some things about how Prop 27 impacts tribal sovereignty. Can you speak to that?
Yes. So one of the reasons why the majority of tribes in California are opposed to Prop 27, it's a direct assault on tribal sovereignty. Tribes would have to give up their tribal sovereignty to offer online sports betting. And we know this because it's written specifically in the measure. Tribes have exclusivity that was granted to them by the voters of California 22 years ago with Prop 1A. California voters passed Prop 1A that gave tribes the exclusive right to regulate gaming on their reservations. And tribes really rely on those gaming revenues to fund their tribal sovereign governments, to support their tribal communities, basic infrastructure. So Prop 27 takes away tribal sovereignties and tribal governments' exclusive rights, giving those exclusive rights to out-of-state, in fact, out-of-the-country corporations.
Thank you. And then kind of going on from that, so it's literally written in the initiative to take away the sovereignty that California voters voted for already. Is that what I heard?
It's there in black and white. And so this is not intimating it will. This is a direct assault, a direct attack on tribal sovereignty. And for hundreds of years, tribal nations in California lived in absolute poverty, struggled to just survive through waves of genocide. And in the last few decades, tribal government gaming has proven to be an economic engine for many of the tribes in California, providing them with an opportunity to get out of poverty, to provide the day-to-day services that tribal communities need. And so Prop 27 really strikes at the heart of tribal sovereignty and ultimately at the heart of tribal people.
And Chairman, you spoke to it before about the ads being confusing. And do you think that, or what do you say to a viewer who sees the ads and they see those tribes, that they mentioned the tribes are there? I know you said there's 60 versus 3 who oppose it. Is there anything else you would say to people who are watching, how they can help to not be so confused by the ads they're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I always encourage people to go read and get educated on it themselves. Read the facts for themselves, and that way they know with 100% certainty that what they interpret is not a false interpretation. They can't be susceptible to deceptive messaging. And go to noprop27.org. You can find information there as it relates to the facts, But the truth of the matter is on Prop 27, it harms all California tribes, just as Dr. Proudfoot mentioned, by losing tribal gaming exclusivity. It requires us to waive our sovereignty. These out-of-state corporations take control of the online sports wagering market here in California. And it completely erodes at what has transpired over the last 2 decades of tribes being able to come up out of poverty, raise the standard of living on the reservations, and to speak to that, I know a lot of voters are confused. They see tribes as all they see is tribes as well. There's some that have had some success, but we can't forget that there's still 72 tribes, over 2/3 of California's tribes here in California are still poor and impoverished. And so before we can go and start looking at potentially having some out-of-state corporations come in here in California and take away and erode at some, something that has helped California Indian tribes to raise their standard of living, we still have a lot of work to do here in California amongst the tribes still.
Thank you. And then what about, you talked about poverty and homelessness among tribes. The initiative purports to generate funds for homelessness. Can you speak to the claim that this is a permanent solution to homelessness, Chairman?
Yeah, absolutely. The initiative writes in there, there's a 10% tax, right? 90% of the profits go to the out-of-state corporations, 10% goes to this tax. Of that tax, first, before the tax gets passed down to the purposes, the intended purposes that's written out there, it creates a fund, right? This homeless and homeless and tribes fund, but they're allowed to take deductions off the top of it first, right? So before that fund gets funded, $30 million, it has to be loaned from that fund to the state of California to pay for and to create the regulatory body. So first and foremost, the fund goes into debt and gives out a loan to the state for $30 million. Then annually, it has to pay for an audit, and in there they've written in there that the audit can cost up to $600,000. And then additionally, it writes in there that first and foremost, before it goes to any of these the two purposes for the tribes and the homeless, it also has to ensure that the department and the division are adequately staffed. And then finally, it requires that the fund first and foremost pay for ongoing regulation and online sports wagering. And so the fund has to take care of all these costs first, and then it goes to the purpose, the intended purpose. So when they say that this 10% tax is going to the homeless and tribes, and of that 85% is going to homeless, 15% goes to tribes, it gets all these deductions taken off first and foremost. And so what's the actual effective, and you can look to other states to kind of study on this, Arizona, you could look to Colorado, even further back east, where they promised the tax and the dollar amount, the projected dollar amount, but the effective rate is much less. And so what they promised here with this 10% tax, effectively what they see it in other states, they've seen it down as low as 50% of what they promised. And so what actually is going to come down to and actually go to the homeless and even less to the tribes at 1.5%, it's very nominal in comparison to what California has put forward even this year. Over $7.6 billion California put forward. This would equate to about 3 to 5% of that budget. It's projected. It can't be, I don't know how they're characterizing it as a solution or permanent solution to homelessness when you're only contributing 3 to 5% of what's being contributed this day right now. So it's like we talked about earlier, it's very deceptive messaging, but I always encourage people to go out and look at the facts. The facts are written there, and what they're projecting is not going to come to fruition.
Thank you, Dr. Proudfoot. A follow-up question. Actually, first of all, I feel like I just got a flashback to when I got my first job as a bag boy at a grocery store, and I got my first paycheck, and I thought I was going to make X amount of money. Well, then I learned about FICA and all the other deductions, and I actually had a far less amount of money, and I was not happy. When you just kind of like laid out the way that the money is going to be spent and won't go to the homeless. So thank you for that very clear explanation. Dr. Proudfoot, I'm curious if you can contrast the amount of money that could possibly come from Prop 27 based off of the way it's set up, the way the chairman described it, compared to the revenues that are already going to tribal communities from casinos and gaming?
Well, over the last 20 years, our tribal government gaming operations have been really great stewards of the land, good community partners, providing wonderful service and benefits, not just to their tribal members, but to their surrounding tribal communities. And I think Californians have witnessed that. They've been wonderful sponsors, promoters, supporting education. Again, not just their membership. Our memberships are fairly small across the state. We are good citizens and good community members. So we have a proven track record of really doing what's right because we live here. After all, this is our home. There is no other homeland for us. This is it. To have out-of-state corporations falsely promise that they're going to solve the homeless crisis in California with a mere 3%. And when you look at the deductions, it's less than that, right? I think California voters are savvy enough and smart enough. We know we have a homeless crisis, not just in California, but across this country. And it's going to take a lot more than an out-of-state corporation promising some ludicrous small percentage when they're going to come in here, make all of the profits, take 90% plus of the profits out of state, out of country, and then leave us with abysmal amount. In fact, given the way they're setting this up, they could be contributing to the homeless problem here in this state. So I would encourage California voters to read the materials. We know that Californians see through this claim, and they know that it's not true that homelessness will be solved or supported by DraftKings and FanDuel. They want to legalize online sports betting in California and take 90% of the profits, with the remaining 10% left for Californians who would be subject to numerous loopholes and deductions, leaving about 8.5 cents for every dollar for the homeless. Think about that, 8.5 cents. It's estimated that this would only provide us with 3% more that is currently spent on homelessness. Do you think that's a fair trade-off? I don't. This is a far cry from what is needed to address a very serious crisis in our state. So ultimately, this is a deceptive, cynical ploy to claim that this measure will solve California's homeless crisis and mental health crisis. I'm a professor. I see students in dire need. Many of our students in our public universities are facing food insecurity, homelessness, and to dangle this proposition as though this is the answer to the solution, at the same time trying to entice young players to game in this way, only to feed the profits of an out-of-state corporation that could care less about the citizens or the lands of California. It's really disingenuous.
Thank you. And Dr. Profit, so like a lot of our activists on the webinar are talking to voters right now about propositions. As a college professor, I mean, you mentioned some great reasons why people should oppose Prop 27, but I'm curious, is there kind of like one thing that you find that really resonates with people about why they should vote no on Prop 27?
You know, as a California Indian woman who's lived long enough to see us go from abject poverty to having the opportunities that we have today, like educational opportunities, access to healthcare, clean water. And this is as a result of things like tribal government gaming. I've seen the investments that tribes have made onto their lands with their local partners, with their citizens. And I know the abject poverty that we all have experienced and come from for those of us of a certain age. And so to have an out-of-state corporation want to strike at the heart of Native peoples in California, I mean, look, we're the smallest of the minority populations in California, and this is our homeland. We have 109 federally recognized tribes, about 80 seeking recognition in this state. There are more natives that reside in California than any other state, but you wouldn't know it because we're dwarfed by the 40 million people that live here. And we have a really small percentage of that 1.5 million are California Indians. And so we need resources to support our tribal lands, our tribal waters, our tribal peoples, and our tribal futures. And to have an out-of-state corporation try and take that from us and put us back into poverty, I just think I I know our California citizens aren't going to allow that to happen. I fully believe that. And I do think that tribes have been amazing partners. We're not bitter, we're better than that. And so I just really want to make sure that people understand. Don't take my word for it. Read, study the initiatives. As a college professor, I tell my students the same thing. Look, my PhD is in political science, so it's my job to understand politics and policies and how the sausage is made. And this is a pretty easy one. Follow the money, right? It's a pretty easy one. Follow the money. If an outside organization or corporation is trying to come to a state like ours with our 40 million people, and they see this as the big kahuna, to use the surf term, and they see this as an opportunity to take the money and run back to their big cities, their out-of-state places, their foreign countries. We as Californians who care about our waters, who care about our lands, and care about the first peoples of this land, we will not let this happen.
Quick question for either of you, quick yes or no question. Are there any specific organizations named in the initiative language that funding would go to that deal with housing, with the homelessness crisis?
I'm not aware of any. Are you, Chairman Salgado?
Any specific organizations?
Correct.
It's written to where it could only go to, it can't go just broadly, right? It has to go to, I think it's limited to just a handful of demographic, and then it has to be then split up amongst them. But it's not like as if a city can just arbitrarily just go there and apply for it. The funding, it has it's a kind of a little bit of a process in order to get that.
Yeah. So another question.
I would add to that, some of the best people to ask about this homelessness effort would be those advocates working in homelessness in California. Right. They know, they see right through this. People are making broken promises to them. And those homeless advocates will tell you that this is simply a ploy. They're being used. And Californians are being used and misled. You know, this is a phrase we all hear far too often, but it applies here. This is fake facts. Mm-hmm. This is fake news. Mm-hmm. These out-of-state corporations are not going to solve the homelessness crisis. They haven't listed out those organizations doing the day-to-day due diligence to help our homelessness folks and homeless efforts and to deal with our mental health crisis. So ask those advocates, are you benefiting from this? Will you benefit from this? And they'll tell you this is simply a ploy to get your vote.
And I'm not going to ask you to describe Prop 26, but we're getting a number of questions about it. So can you just share what your position is on Prop 26 and anything beyond that you want to share briefly? To either of you.
What I would say about Prop 26 is I support tribal sovereignty, and I support a tribe's sovereignty to promote an initiative that they think will benefit them.
Okay. Chairman, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, my personal position, I think we need to come back in 2024 with something that's a workable solution for everyone. You know, tribes have, like as Dr. Proudfoot talked about, have a proven track record, a demonstrated track record of being well-regulated industries. We're the most regulated industry, gaming industry in the U.S. We have three different regulatory bodies that we have to answer to, and so I think no this year, but we can come back with something in 2024 that everybody could support.
And what is likely to happen if both Prop 27 and 26 are defeated, or even both pass? Can you speak to that, Chairman, or either of you?
Yeah, if if they both are defeated, then like I mentioned, we come back in 2024, right? We come back with something that works, that we can all with in good conscience, and actually see the benefit. You'll hear all the wide support, just as we have got the large opposition. You'll see that long list of support, and California voters can support. And so 2024, I think,
All right. And then what do you say to people who believe that online gambling, that the tribe shouldn't have a monopoly on gambling? Dr. Profit.
I would say that the people of California spoke back in 2001 and allowed for the exclusivity for tribal government gaming to happen in a very regulated way. We have been good stewards. We have proven to be great citizens and great partners in working together. And so I think that honoring the exclusivity of tribal government gaming has worked well, not only for California tribes, but for the state of California and all its citizens. And I don't think we should break that agreement. And I don't think that Californians would benefit from an out-of-state corporation coming in and leeching off the citizens and the lands and the people of California and then taking those profits elsewhere.
Thank you, Chairman Salgado. Last question. We opened the conversation with you talking about how many other tribes are opposed to this initiative, but you're joined by other groups as well. The Democratic Party, of course, we are against 27. Can you speak to who else has joined you in opposing Prop 27?
We have over 100 elected officials throughout the state that have joined, just as we're very proud, that the California Democratic Party has taken a position to oppose. But throughout the state, there's a number of, like I said, well over 100 elected officials and organizations. As far as organizations, we have, the homeless advocates. Actually, there's more homeless organizations opposed to Prop 27 than that actually support it. We have public safety, veterans, education, civil rights groups, labor. There's the list of organizations that are opposed to it are dwarf the list of that support it. And like I mentioned earlier, if you go to the website, you can find and see who's taken that pledge to oppose Prop 27. And if they feel inclined to do so, please do so yourself. But you can go there and see the long list of people that have stood up and stood with tribes and stood with Californians and opposed this initiative.
I want to give a thank you both, Chairman Salgado and Dr. Proudfit. I just want to say I'm walking away with some very clear reasons why I should vote no. I mean, just the language itself goes into how it's going to strip tribal sovereignty. Bad. How very little of the money that will be raised will actually go to the big solution it's supposed to be solving, homelessness. Bad. And I think, like Dr. Profit, the way you shared very clearly how the tribes are currently using their revenues in very responsible ways to actually address homelessness and poverty, not just for tribal communities, but for the rest of California. And Prop 27 would change that opportunity for tribes to do that. So I know I'm walking away with very clear reasons why I want to vote no. And I hope that those who watch today will do the same and will spread the message. So I want to thank you both. Thank you all for joining us. We have another Prop Talk next Wednesday, same time, same place. Tell a friend, and go to No on Prop 27 to get more information, to volunteer, to donate, and have a good evening, everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you, everyone.